Mark Regev is a senior advisor to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, I heard the representatives of South Africa speak this morning. They didn't use one word, and that word was war. There's a war going on. There are missiles fired from Gaza into Israel. So this morning, while they were speaking, there were missiles fired from Gaza into Israel. We are acting both proportionally, and while doing so, we are distinguishing between civilians and combatants. Our enemy is the Hamas terrorist organization. Now, of course, there's been destruction. Of course, unfortunately, regrettably, there's been collateral damage. But between that and genocide, it is an outrageous claim. And South Africa has become the legal spokesperson for the Hamas terror organization. South Africa, modern South Africa, prides itself on being the rainbow nation, the anti-racist nation. And here they are aligned with the Hamas organization, which is openly an anti-Semitic organization, a hate group, a group that, when it talks about Jews, is as racist to the core. And here is South Africa aligning itself with this group, giving this group a legal defense. It is surely a travesty of history. The allegation that Israel is somehow conducting a war of genocide against the people of Gaza is simply outrageous. And it is a travesty. Why? Because Israel continues to make a maximum effort to safeguard the civilian population. When we were brutally attacked by Hamas from Gaza, Israel could have finished this war in a matter of days had we used all the power available to us. But we said no. We said our enemy is not the people of Gaza, our enemy is this brutal Hamas terrorist organization.
Well, except there has been a lot of language which has suggested quite the reverse. I mean, the Israeli president, Herzog, saying it's an entire nation out there that is responsible. This rhetoric about civilians being not aware, not involved, it's absolutely not true. Nissim Vaturi, the Likud MK, who's the deputy leader of the Knesset, the parliament, saying we are too humane, burn Gaza, no less. There is a lot of language out there which has talked about the entirety of Gaza being in Israel's crosshairs.
We have 120 members of our Knesset. All of them have their own opinions and all speak freely, but they don't speak for the government of Israel. And as for our president, anyone who knows President Herzog knows that he's a moderate, and his remarks there have been quoted out of context. He in no way has called on anything like the allegations have said. This is cherry-picking quotes here and there for deliberate political means.
Well, politicians should stand accountable for what they say. I mean, you say it's cherry-picking. What about Benjamin Netanyahu then, the Prime Minister, who says you must remember what Amalek has done to you? I mean, these were... I'm sure you were aware, but just for our audience around the world. I mean, Amalek...
He was talking about Hamas.
Well, hang on, but Amalek
is a brutal enemy.
Yeah, but you will understand that Amalek is a biblical reference to a nation. The divine injunction in the Bible about the Amalekites is you should totally destroy everything that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. In other words, a total war. Why on earth did the Prime Minister invoke the name of Amalek if he was just talking about a targeted operation against Hamas?
He was talking about that Hamas are the modern-day manifestations of this biblical enemy.
And the injunction Amalek from God is to wipe out the entire nation.
To wipe out Hamas, correct. And that is the goal of our operation, to wipe out Hamas. Amalek attacked from behind. They killed women and children. They killed the sick. He was trying to demonstrate that the depravity that Hamas demonstrated on October 7th, when they mutilated, when they raped, when they beheaded, they were showing Amalek-type inhumanity. Between that and calls for genocide, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, except, I mean, this reference to Amalek, the Prime Minister decided to use, then informed, and this is part of the South African submission, footage of Israeli soldiers in uniform in Gaza on the 5th of December saying, we know our motto, there are no uninvolved civilians, we need to wipe off the seed of Amalek. I mean, words have consequences.
Of course they do, and that's why those soldiers were reprimanded by the IDF command, because the orders are clear to make a distinction between Hamas, who is our enemy, a vicious enemy, a horrific enemy, and between the civilian population of Gaza, who are not the targets. of our operation.
Would you welcome, in order to clear your name, I know that you are hoping that the justices throw this case out, but would you welcome UN investigators who could investigate the actions of Hamas as much as the actions of the Israeli military?
So as you know, the UN, unfortunately, has a pattern historically of anti-Israel bias. Not just Mark Regev and the Israeli government says so, but two Secretary Generals of the United Nations, both Kofi Annan and Ban Ki-moon, both have addressed publicly the issue of anti-Israel bias in the United Nations, in its institutions, in the organs of the UN, and so forth. Now, the current Secretary General, unfortunately, instead of challenging this institutional bias, seems to embrace it. And if you say to Israel, will we accept a delegation that we know will be biased against us? Of course, we would have problems with that. Why is the Hamas side so eagerly awaiting deliverance from the UN? Because they know that that bias is there. They know that the UN has called for a unilateral, unconditional ceasefire, which will keep them in power.